I was standing in the kitchen, facing a clear glass vase filled with water and a bunch of white carnations still carrying the morning chill. The afternoon sunlight streamed diagonally through the window, casting warm golden streaks across the table. I loved that feeling. Quiet, steady, scented with flowers, wood, and the peace of ordinary days. As I trimmed the stems, thinking about dinner, I heard Ryan's voice from the living room. It was low and a little hoarse, but clear enough to slip through the wall dividing the two rooms. "The account's under both our names. She'll never know." I froze. The small knife stayed in my hand, a drop of water sliding down my arm, cold as ice. Ryan went on, steady and confident, with a hint of a chuckle. "We'll just take small amounts each time. No one will notice." For the first few seconds, I didn't understand what was happening. Then my heart tightened, as if someone had gripped it. "The account's under both our names." That was my savings account, the one with nearly $865,000. Most of it was the money Harold, my husband, and I had saved over the course of more than 40 years. I stood motionless, listening to every word echoing from the living room. He was talking about withdrawing small amounts, not making the bank suspicious. As I listened, my mind went blank, as though all the sounds in the house had vanished except my son's voice. Ryan, the son I had believed would change if only given more time. The son I kept giving money, chances, affection, even after he had turned 40. And now, he was planning to take away everything I had. I don't know how long I stood there. I only remember the water spilling over the table, dripping down the wooden floor, while I still hadn't taken a breath. After a while, I set the knife down. On the other side of the wall, Ryan kept talking, his laughter blending into the stillness of the house. I looked down at my hands, trembling yet strangely dry-eyed. Only a spreading sensation crept from my chest up to my throat, cold and hollow. There are moments in life that make you age in a single breath. For me, that moment was realizing the son I gave birth to was plotting to steal his mother's future. If you've ever heard a story that made you stop and think about trust within a family, subscribe to this channel. Here we tell authentic stories, to remind each other to live kindly, to cherish those who love us, and never to take their sacrifices for granted. That day, I didn't just overhear a phone call. I heard the moment trust was shattered inside my heart. I don't know where to begin. Maybe from 1974, in the small town where I met Harold for the first time. I was 20 then, fresh out of college, teaching 3rd grade at a public elementary school. Harold was 4 years older, a warehouse manager for a construction materials company in Detroit. He was a large man with a deep voice and a smile that made people feel at ease. We met at a party hosted by a mutual friend. He didn't talk much, just told a few simple stories about work and asked if I liked going to the movies. I said yes. A year later, we got married. A small wedding. Nothing fancy, just family, a few friends, and a homemade cake. But we were happy because we both believed that if we worked hard and loved sincerely, good things would come naturally. The early years of our marriage were marked by peace and harmony. Harold went to work regularly and I taught school, came home to cook, do laundry, and read. We lived in a small suburban house with a few rose bushes by the door. Life was simple, not rich, but full. We believed happiness came from ordinary things. A meal with someone waiting for you, a person to talk to when you're tired, and a quiet night's sleep under your own roof. We had 2 children. Emily came first. She was like her father, careful, thoughtful, always looking out for others. Then came Ryan. He was different, cheerful, always smiling, always finding a way to melt my heart. When he misbehaved, knocking over a vase or forgetting his homework, all he had to do was look up and say, "I'm sorry, Mom," and my anger would dissolve. Harold was strict. He believed that children should learn responsibility at an early age. I, on the other hand, feared that I might hurt their feelings. We argued often about Ryan. Harold would say, "You spoil him too much. He'll grow up thinking everything comes easy. I laughed it off, saying, he's just a kid. I didn't realize that just a kid could last forever. Once Ryan got a failing grade in math. The teacher asked parents to sign the test. Harold was busy, and I was afraid he'd be angry, so I forged his signature. I traced it carefully, my hand trembling. Ryan hugged me afterwards and said, "Thank you." My heart warmed, thinking I had done the right thing. Another time, when Ryan was 16, he drove a friend's car too fast and got pulled over by the police. Harold never found out. I quietly went to the station, paid the fine, and brought him home. On the way back, Ryan was silent, his face pale. I thought he was scared and would change. But a few days later, he was cheerful again, as if nothing had happened, and I kept that secret. Small things like that became a habit. I thought I was protecting him, not realizing I was teaching him how to escape consequences. Time passed. Emily attended college and then moved to New York to work as a nurse. Ryan drifted, starting and quitting school, switching jobs. Harold couldn't hide his disappointment. He stayed quiet when Ryan came home asking for money. I always found an excuse. He's just finding his path. Harold would sigh. When I was 58, Harold had a stroke. One morning, he collapsed in the bathroom. The left side of his body went numb, and his speech slurred. My world fell apart. I took early retirement to care for him. Every day, I woke at 5, cooked porridge, massaged his limbs, and practiced speech with him. Sometimes he tried to say my name, his lips trembling, tears falling. I held his hand and said, "It's okay, I'm here." Ryan rarely came home. He said work was busy or his wife couldn't come. I didn't blame him. Whenever he did visit, I cooked his favorite dishes and felt happy, like seeing someone long away. But deep down, I knew. Every visit came with a request. 4 years later, Harold passed away. That morning was so still. He died in his sleep, his hand still holding mine. When the funeral staff arrived, I hadn't moved from my chair, not from shock, but emptiness. The house was so quiet afterwards that I could hear the clock ticking second by second. Harold left me everything, the house, the savings, the insurance, over $1 million in total. He had once said, "You'll never want for anything." And he was right. I had everything, except the man who said those words. After the funeral, Ryan began visiting more often. He asked if I needed help organizing documents, if the roof needed fixing, and if I needed someone to drive me to the market. I was glad, thinking that loss had made my son more mature. I didn't know that some returns are not born from affection, but from opportunity. After Harold passed, I had only one reason left to keep living: Ryan. I didn't know that this very reason would nearly cost me everything. After the funeral, the house felt enormous, every step echoing like a hollow drum. Emily said I should hire someone to help tidy up, maybe go out more to clear my head, but nowhere felt like home except this house. I still brewed 2 cups of tea every morning, placing one across the table as if Harold were still there. A few weeks later, I met Clara, a financial advisor whom Emily had recommended. She was about 50, with a gentle but firm voice. We sat in her office, a bright, spotless space that felt like a fresh sheet of paper. Clara reviewed my savings, insurance, and investments, then said, "You have an excellent foundation. I'll help you rearrange things so everything's safer." After our discussion, she helped me transfer most of the funds into stable investment accounts and keep $65,000 in my personal account for daily expenses. I remember leaving her office that day. The air was cool, and thinking, I'm okay now. Harold would be at peace. That evening, Emily called on video. She looked tired, just off her hospital shift. "Mom, I'm glad you found a trustworthy advisor," she said. "But please don't let anyone else touch that money, not even Ryan." I laughed. "You worry too much. Ryan's not bad, he just hasn't found his footing yet." Emily was silent for a while, then sighed. "You always think the best of him." I said, "If a mother doesn't think the best of her own child, then who will?" We changed the subject to her kids, and the call ended quietly. Ryan started dropping by more often. Sometimes it's to fix a leaking pipe or to mow the lawn. He said he just didn't want me to feel lonely. On some afternoons, we would sit on the porch, and he would talk about his father. I listened, my heart softening. He said, "I wish I were more like Dad, steady, capable like he was." I saw in his eyes a kind of sadness, like a child who's lost his anchor. One afternoon in May, he sat silently looking at the yard and whispered, "Mom, I failed. My project fell apart. My partners pulled out, and now I'm deep in debt." I noticed his hand trembling around the coffee cup. I touched his shoulder. "You'll get through it. Everyone has hard times." He looked at me, his eyes red. "I just need one chance to start over." Something in my chest clenched. Harold had always said that money couldn't fix everything, but at that moment, all I saw was my son, lost and desperate. I opened my checkbook and transferred $30,000 to him. "Use this to pay off your debts and start again," I said. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'll make you proud, Mom." But his promise vanished like smoke. 2 months later, he returned, claiming he needed an additional $10,000 for marketing expenses, then $7,000 for an online campaign, then $15,000 for a major investment opportunity. Each time, he looked at me with warm, hopeful eyes that made me believe I was helping someone who was genuinely trying to improve. Until Emily called, her voice sharp with frustration. "Mom, I can't take it anymore. He's taking advantage of you." I said, "You don't understand. He's trying." "No, you don't understand," she snapped. "You're letting him drag you down." We argued, fiercely, until I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't speak to my daughter for 3 weeks. One night, I received a strange email from the bank. Confirmation of contact information change. I read it over and over, my heart pounding. I didn't remember requesting that. I called Ryan immediately. He said, "I just updated the info in case you ever need help, don't worry." His tone was calm, light, as always. I believed him, but something inside me shifted. A thin crack appeared in my thoughts, like a hairline fracture in glass. Trust, once fractured, never truly mends. But I tried to patch it with motherly love. One afternoon, Ryan suggested, "Mom, maybe you should add me as a joint holder on your main account. That way, if anything happens to you, I can help with the bills." I hesitated. When Clara heard about it, she warned gently, "Please be careful. Remember, once another person's name is on the account, they have full withdrawal rights." I gave an awkward smile. "I trust my son." Clara said nothing more, just nodded. I was 70, and the fear of falling ill or being alone made me weak. I thought, if something were to happen to me, who would take care of things? Emily lived far away, and Ryan was only a minute's drive. So I filled out the form and added his name to the account containing $865,000. On the day we went to the bank, Ryan came with me. He was cheerful, chatting with the clerk, signing his name quickly. I caught a glimpse of something. His eyes lit up for just a second before it vanished. I told myself it was only my imagination. When the paperwork was done, he held my hand. "Now you can relax, Mom. I'll always be here." I smiled, though unease rippled inside me. A few weeks later, I noticed Ryan asking small, casual questions. "What time does that bank open, Mom?" Or, "What's the withdrawal limit per transaction again?" I answered, but each question pricked at my heart like a tiny needle. I began to pay attention, but said nothing. At night, the house grew unbearably quiet again. I lay there listening to the ticking clock in the living room, slow, steady. Each tick seemed to knock against my skull, echoing a question I didn't want to face. Was Harold right all along, and I wrong for decades? In the days that followed, Ryan continued to visit, still smiled, and still called me "Dear Mom." But behind those smiles, I sensed something shifting, like a silent current beneath calm water. I still trusted my son, but that trust had become as thin as glass with a crack. and I had no idea that crack was about to shatter. I remember that afternoon clearly. Sunlight streamed through the curtains and the scent of toasted bread mingled with carnations on the table. Ryan was in the living room, his laptop open. He said he needed to print some documents for a client. I let him be and went to the kitchen to slice tomatoes for lunch. While cutting bread, I heard the phone ring in the living room. Ryan picked it up. His voice sounded usual, even cheerful, as if he were talking to a friend. I didn't mean to listen, but the house was small and sound slipped easily through the walls. Next week, early in the morning, right when the bank opens. Fewer people then. My hand stopped midair, the knife frozen on the cutting board. It's fine, I already checked. The account's under both our names. She'll never know. Those words pierced straight into my chest like cold needles. I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. Ryan continued, his voice lower now. We'll just take out 40 or 50,000 first, then divide it into smaller withdrawals. No one will notice. I stood still. The kitchen suddenly felt too bright, too silent. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Part of me wanted to step out, to shout, to ask, how could you do this to your own mother? But another part whispered, stay quiet. Stay calm. If it's true, you need to know for sure. I took a deep breath, set the knife down, and went on making lunch. When I stepped into the living room, Ryan smiled as if nothing had happened. Mom, I'm starving. I placed a plate of sandwiches in front of him and said softly, eat, son. We ate together, as usual. He discussed his new project, which involves a large upcoming contract. I nodded, smiling faintly, hiding my trembling hands in my lap. When he left, I walked him to the door and watched as his car disappeared down the street. The door clicked shut, and the house sank into silence. I sat down, my heart still racing. 30 seconds passed before I picked up the phone and called Emily. Mom? Her voice was full of concern. I told her everything, every detail. When I reached the words, the account's under both our names, my voice broke. Emily was quiet for a few seconds, then said firmly, Mom, you need to go to the bank right now. Don't wait until tomorrow. Maybe I misunderstood. No, you didn't. If you're wrong, you'll only lose an afternoon. But if you're right and do nothing, you'll lose everything. Her words jolted me awake. I grabbed my coat, my purse, and headed to the car. The drive to the bank took less than 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. My palms were damp with sweat, despite the air conditioning being on high. Each red light stretched time endlessly. When I arrived, I hurried inside. The branch manager, Susan, was someone I'd met after Harold passed away. She looked at me, startled. Margaret, is everything okay? I sat down and told her everything, from when Ryan asked to be added to the account to the conversation I had just overheard. She didn't ask many questions, only said quietly, "We'll take care of this right now." Susan turned to her computer and began typing quickly. The rhythmic tapping of keys filled the air. The screen's glow reflected faintly on her face. I heard the printer hum, the scratch of a pen, the shuffle of papers, each sound echoing like my own heartbeat. "You want to remove his name from this account, correct?" she asked. I nodded. "And transfer everything into a new account under my name only." Susan said, "All right, we'll process that within a few minutes." I watched the screen, 865,000 displayed in clear digits. The sum of a lifetime of 40 years of work, of every morning Harold left early for his job, of every winter I spent teaching in the cold. And now I was moving it all to protect myself from the very son I had given birth to. When the process was done, Susan looked up and asked softly, "Would you like to leave a small balance in the old account, just to avoid suspicion?" I whispered, "Leave. Just a few cents." We left 25 cents. I signed the papers, my hand trembling slightly. When Susan handed me the new statement, I stared at the $865,000 in the new account, tears beginning to fall. Not because I mourned the money, but because I felt both relief and heartbreak at once. Before I left, Susan looked at me and asked quietly, "Are you safe?" Do you need us to provide any additional help? I shook my head. I just need to know that money won't disappear. Driving home, I felt like I had just escaped a burning building. The house appeared in the distance, still peaceful, but I knew everything inside had changed. 3 days later, the phone rang. It was Ryan. His voice was tight, low, forced, steady. "Mom, I need to see you, now." I replied, "All right. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I straightened up the living room, brewed a pot of tea, and set out 2 cups. When his car stopped out front, I heard the door slam hard. He walked in, his face flushed, eyes burning with anger. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Yes." "Why did you move all the money?" I looked straight into his eyes and answered calmly, "Because it's my money." "You had no right to do that. My name's on the account." I said quietly, "You have your name, but you don't have the right." He froze, his face turning red. "I was just trying to help you manage it, don't you understand?" "No," I said, my voice steady and low. "You wanted control. That's not the same thing." The air grew heavy. Ryan took a step closer. "Who told you? Was it Emily?" I shook my head. "No one had to tell me. I heard it. I heard you myself." His expression changed instantly. I saw the flicker in his eyes, the split second when guilt fought denial. I spoke slowly. "Were you really planning to steal from your own mother?" He shot back, shouting, "It's my money too. My name's on the account." I nodded slightly. "Yes, your name is there. But you didn't earn a single dollar of it. Every cent in that account came from your father's sweat, from the years I spent teaching. All you have is the name, and your greed." He fell silent, breathing hard, then turned away. "I can't believe you'd do this to me." I stood and pointed toward the door. "And I can't believe you'd do this to me." Ryan looked around the house, his eyes cold. Then he pulled out his keys and slammed them down on the table. "Fine. Take care of yourself." The door slammed shut behind him. I didn't throw my son out. I only opened the door so he could walk out of my life. The house was silent again. The ticking clock echoed through the empty room. I sat down, staring at the keys still lying on the table. Tears fell, slow, heavy. I didn't cry because of the money. I cried because I finally understood even a mother's love has its limits. That night, I walked around the house. The family photo was still hanging on the wall, the 3 of us standing side by side, smiling. I took it down, wiped off the dust, and carefully replaced it. Ryan's shirt was still on the sofa, faintly smelling of laundry detergent. In the hallway corner, his sneakers lay scattered, the laces frayed. I gathered everything, folded it neatly, placed it in a cardboard box, and carried it out to the garage. There was no funeral for a mother's love, only silence. In the days after Ryan left, the house felt hollow. I could hear the echo of my own footsteps on the wooden floor, the wind slipping through the door cracks, and the ticking of the clock marking each second of loneliness. For the first 3 weeks, I didn't sleep through a single night. Sometimes I woke in the middle of the night thinking I heard his car pulling up outside. But when I looked out the window, there was only the empty street and the dim yellow light. Ryan disappeared completely. No calls, no messages, no apology. The house returned to order, but something inside had shattered, something I knew would never mend. I changed the locks and visited my lawyer to update my will. I still left everything equally between the 2 children, but with a clear condition: neither could receive their share early, and all assets would be released only through a trust. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it so no one else would have to face the same fear I once felt. After that, I went back to see Clara. She looked at me with worry and kindness in her eyes. Together, we added more security layers to my accounts, locking out external access, adding multi-step verification codes. When all the paperwork was done, Clara gently held my hand. "You did the right thing. Protecting yourself is nothing to be ashamed of." I nodded, though inside there was still an emptiness that no password could ever guard. A few months later, I happened to see a flyer from a support group for seniors who had experienced financial abuse, the Senior Financial Safety Circle. I hesitated for a long time before making the call. The first meeting took place in a small room at the public library. There were 12 of us, mostly women. Each had her own story: a grandson who borrowed money and never repaid it, a daughter-in-law who secretly sold family belongings, and someone who lost her home because she trusted the wrong person's signature. When it was my turn to share, I kept it brief. No one judged me, only quiet nods of understanding. After that meeting, I went home feeling lighter. I realized I wasn't the only one who'd been betrayed, and that didn't make me weak. It just made me human. Time passed, and spring came again. Emily came to visit with her husband and 2 children. I woke early to prepare breakfast, and the house was filled once more with voices and laughter. That afternoon, Emily and I went out back to plant a few more rows of flowers. The soil was soft, the sunlight gentle, the scent of freshly cut grass drifting through the breeze. As she worked, Emily asked softly, "Mom, do you regret it?" I stayed silent for a moment. Birds were chirping on the roof. "Yes," I said quietly, "but not because I protected the money. I regret teaching my son that his mother would always sacrifice for him, even when he was wrong. When love has no boundaries, people forget where right and wrong begin." Emily looked at me, eyes glistening. She didn't speak, just took my hand and squeezed it gently. We sat together, listening to the wind, weaving through the trees, each lost in our own thoughts. Then a year passed. One early autumn morning, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper, written in familiar handwriting. "I'm trying to start over. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just hope you're at peace." I read it over and over, then folded it and placed it inside the box where the family photos were kept. In the picture, Harold was smiling gently, and Ryan, at 10 years old, stood between us, messy hair, dirt on his face. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because some things don't need words. I just wanted to keep the letter there, to remind myself that no matter how much it hurts, you can still let go. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is freeing your heart so that what's good can grow again. Now, I live alone, but I no longer feel lonely. Every morning, I still brew 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for Harold, and water the flowers on the porch. The carnations bloom again, white and fragrant, just like the day I first learned of betrayal. But now, they no longer feel heavy. Family is never perfect. But if anything can mend the cracks, it's respect and kindness. If this story makes you think of someone in your family, someone who hurt you, or someone you never got to apologize to, share it with them. And if you want to hear more true stories about people, about family, and about staying kind in a problematic world, subscribe to this channel. We still have many stories to tell, not just to remember, but to learn how to live better.